Up the recording. Governance, are we on track? Thank you. I'd like to declare the agenda briefing of 13th of February 2024 open, and the time is 6 p.m. We start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land. We also pay our respects to elders, both past and present. In accordance with the City of Canning's policy CM 105, agenda briefings are conducted for the purpose of providing elected members with a forum to ask questions of the City's administration and to receive answers to those questions to assist informed decision-making. Agenda briefings are not decision-making forums. Questions may be asked and answered, and there is to be no debate or discussion. Questions must be specifically relevant to the item being discussed. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial, proximity or partiality interest that they have in an item to be discussed, and declare the nature of that interest at the commencement of the briefing or at the latest when the item is about to be discussed. If a member or employee has a financial, proximity or partiality interest in a matter arising during discussion, the nature of that interest must be disclosed as soon as possible after the matter is raised. And interests are to be disclosed in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government Act. Individuals disclosing an interest other than a partiality interest must not participate in that part of a briefing relating to their interest and must leave the meeting room whilst the item is under discussion. Agenda briefings are public meetings, and any information provided to the meeting by attendees may be publicly accessible. Can I ask everybody here this evening to please turn off your mobile phones, or at least put them on silent, please, for the duration of the meeting. This briefing is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Just in regards to the reasoning why the whole council and executive and staff, thank you everyone, most of us are wearing a flash of red tonight, will be explained by the erstwhile councillor Paul Tuchek. Councillor Tuchek, why are we all wearing red tonight?
Thank you very much. Big happy birthday, first of all, and
thank you.
Happy Year of the Dragon to everyone. The reason why we're wearing red tonight, and thanks very much, everyone looks fantastic, is that, so Google tells me, is that heart disease is the #1 killer in Australia. So we need to start looking after our heart and our health, and we'll be making a donation later on this evening. Thank you.
Thank you to everybody for supporting the initiative, and thank you to Councillor Tuchek for his work in asking Mr Google what is the relevant charity of the month. So thank you for selecting it. At item 2, attendances. At item 2.1, apologies. There are no apologies tonight. The full council is here in attendance. Approved leave of absence. So there are none. Disclosures of interest. Mr CEO, do we have any disclosures this evening?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received no declarations of financial interest or partiality interest.
Thank you. That being the case, we'll move on to question time for the public at item 4.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. Sorry,
yes.
Can I please interrupt? I just realised I should
Absolutely,
put in
no problem at
impartiality.
all. Yeah, I'll just get you to bring that up here to the CEO, and I'll get him to read it to the meeting, and then we'll pass it on to governance. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've received a declaration of impartiality interest from Councillor or Deputy Mayor Amanda Spencer-Teo in relation to item CO 00224, which is the DSLG funding item. The nature of her interest is she is a social member of Rossmoyne Bowling Club.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, CEO. We move to item 4, question time for the public. Responses to previous questions taken on notice, of which there are none. At item 4.2, is there anyone in the public gallery wishing to ask a question to Council this evening? There are none. I therefore do not propose to open or close public question time. We move past item 4.2 to item 4.3. We do have a deputation that's been approved tonight. I'd like to welcome Ms Sian Mawson in relation to item IE 001 of 24, the report being the request for the removal of a mature tree at 32 Silvertop Terrace in Willetton. That item appears on page 71 of this evening's agenda. Ms Mawson, thank you. You're already at the podium. I'll ask you just to introduce yourself and please go ahead. You have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sian Mawson from Gibbs Street in East Cannington. Let me start by declaring that I do not like lemon-scented gums. The species is native to Queensland and New South Wales and has become an environmental weed in the southwest of Western Australia. In my eyes, it has no place being here. However, I also appreciate that we have already done so much damage to our natural environment that every single tree must be protected. Who doesn't appreciate the shade of a tree on a hot day? The same applies to our wildlife. During hot periods, birds and other animals will be sitting in the shade, either on the ground or in the branches, waiting for the day to cool down. And while this tree may not be native to Perth, our more resilient and adaptable native animals can use it to feed from or roost and nest in. This tree has an environmental value. I have no doubt that this tree also has value to the local community. Whether or not they say anything out loud, I imagine that people who truly look at this tree have their spirit lifted by what they see. Standing taller than any other tree in the area, it is like a beacon in the landscape. This tree gives the community a sense of place. And we must remember that this tree belongs to the whole Canning community. But I also acknowledge the apprehension that this tree causes the adjacent homeowners. Having seen a similar tree fall nearby, I can only imagine the thoughts that must now be going through their minds. But wanting to remove the tree in question is like saying that my neighbour's dog should be put down because a different dog of the same breed attacked someone. Yes, a nearby tree fell down, but the tree in question, as far as I'm aware, has not done anything to warrant its destruction. It appears that the request to remove the tree is based on a fear of what might happen, not on anything that has actually happened. Trees do sometimes fall over or drop branches. It is somewhat ironic that perhaps the biggest influence in whether a tree will fall or drop a branch has been brought about because we have removed so many trees. Climate change is seeing Perth having drier winters and longer, hotter summers. These conditions stress trees. In dry conditions, stressed trees can drop limbs as a way to reduce their water requirements. One of the ways we have of reducing the impact of climate change is to grow more trees. Retaining existing trees and planting more is arguably the biggest influence the city can have on the future climate. But planting trees today will not influence the climate to any great degree for another 20 years or more, whereas destroying a mature tree will remove the benefit it provides in a matter of hours. Removing much of the vegetation is one of the things that got us into this mess, and we will not fix it by removing more. The city recognises the importance of retaining mature trees, and I agree with the city in this instance. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sian. Thank you for coming along this evening. Appreciate you taking the time to do that. I'm going to actually propose at item 5 to bring forward as the first item, councillors, that item, which will be item IE 001 of 24. That is on page 71 of tonight's agenda. So that will be the first item brought forward for the convenience of those in the public gallery with an interest. Reports of committee meetings at item 6, there are none. Reports generally. The first report this evening is from the Office of the CEO, Mr Michael Littleton to my left. It's OC 001 of 24. Sorry, we're going to bring forward that item. We'll go straight to page 71, IE 001 of 24. Councillors, I think we're all well aware of the item. We just had a deputation in relation to it. Are there any questions in relation to that particular item and the tree in question? Councillor Bain, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. When is the revised ET 525 going to be presented to Council? Thank you.
Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That's scheduled, Councillor Bain, for probably April this year.
April this year, Councillor Bain. Any follow-up question? Fine with that. Thank you, councillors. Any further questions on that item? Thank you then. We shall move on and get back to our agenda. Thank you, Mr Michael Littleton. OC 001 of 24, petition received from Mr M Genetti of Queen's Park. The recommendation is on page 6. Do I have any questions in relation to that item? Yes, Councillor Kunza.
Mayor Hall, just procedurally, I'm just wondering why this has been treated as an item of the CEO when standing orders dictate that it's where it's to be dealt with in the agenda.
CEO? Is it a question you're able to answer? Governance, I'll get you just to respond to that if you don't mind. Ms Cornish?
Thank you, Councillor Kunzer. It's not listed as a report, although it is titled under the CEO's section of the agenda. It is just a recommendation based on the petition that's been received, so it shouldn't appear as a report as such.
Ms Cornish, you're agreeing with the councillor that it should probably be under petitions and not listed here as a report? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. What the problem is, in our AB agenda, we don't have a section titled petitions. So come the OCM agenda, it'll be in the relevant area.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions specifically in relation to that item? None. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on past the petition to OC002 of 24, the report title being Preliminary Land Optimisation Investigation for Herald Avenue in Willetton. The officer's recommendation, which is in two parts, appears on page 8 of the agenda and is also on screen. Any questions, councillors, in relation to that item? Councillor Bain, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can the City confirm if there's been any recent interest in leasing the former Canning Lodge buildings or purchasing the land?
CEO, are you able to provide an update in relation to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, we have certainly received interest in use of the land for different purposes, but all of those interests have largely been taken into consideration in the confidential item. So we speak about the broader use, and none of those uses have been A, specific, or B, have or are consistent with what we believe is the synergistic uses of that land.
Thank you. Any further questions on that item, councillors? Thank you. We shall move on then to item 7.2, the relevant director being Ms Lorraine Driscoll, the Director of Corporate and Commercial, the first report being CC001 of 24, the report title Lease Renewal, Telstra Corporation Limited, Lot 78, Bannister Road in Canning Vale. The recommendation appears on page 15. Councillors, any questions on that item? Deputy Mayor Amanda Spencer-Teo.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Just a quick one. Had the old lease been subject to annual CPI increases, or is this part of the new lease structure?
Ms Driscoll.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. As far as I'm aware, the old lease did include CPI, but I will confirm that for you next week.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors, on that item? Thank you. We shall move on then to CC002 of 24, the monthly financial report for December 2023. The recommendation, which is in 5 parts, is on page 22 of the agenda. Any questions? Councillor Hearn, thank you.
So this report brings us halfway through the financial year, and I'm a little bit concerned to see that our projected surplus has now been revised down to a balanced budget, and it concerns me that in another 6 months we could actually be revising it down to a deficit. So I have been taking a closer look at the numbers in this report, and once again I have found that they do not give me the information required to make an assessment of how we are actually travelling against our budget, and this is based on the fact that we have these
I just need a question from you there. If you're heading towards a question, you probably need to get to it. Thank you.
I suppose my first question is, once again, like I questioned in my first agenda briefing, why we don't follow the Australian accounting standards on having goods that have been received but not yet invoiced added into the actuals. And if that's not the case, can we at least have that separated from the projected expenditure so that we can make an assessment of where we are actually tracking against the budget versus the projected expenditure?
Director Driscoll.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I think if I understand the question correctly, it's regarding the commitments figures in the expenditure in the capital area. So the majority of the commitments relate to purchase orders raised. So therefore, they're not goods received at this point. So they're not accruals. So they represent purchases in the future and would be represented by the relevant budget for the subsequent months. So they're not necessary to accrue those at this point because we haven't received the goods for those. The majority are purchase orders.
Can I reply?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so that explains 17A, which is explained as purchase orders raised but goods not delivered by supplier. So, that is correct, that would be counted as projected expenditure. But under 17B on page 26, and the same as for operational expenditure and capital expenditure, it's described as goods received but not invoices not provided by suppliers. So my understanding of accounting principles is that actually should be included through month-end write-ups as actuals. And these two numbers, at the very least, should be separated for me to understand where we are tracking against budget.
Director, are you able to answer that question or provide some commentary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so part of the commitments are goods received and not invoice not received yet. If it would assist, we can certainly separate those figures for you so you can see in future.
That would be really fabulous.
Breakdown. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just on that too, the whole idea of the reporting here, and we're governed by the Local Government Act and the manner in which we report, but the executive here try to make it as easy as they can for us. So if you've got ideas in relation to that, I know that the director would be happy to hear them. If it makes it simpler for council to understand those accounts, I'm certain that there will be some discussion, and I'm sure you'd be happy to undertake it to come up with a report that will actually be of greater benefit. But perhaps you take that offline and we'll get an answer for you. Thank you. Any further questions on that item, councillors, the monthly financial report? Thank you. We shall move on then to item PD 001 of 24. Mr Graham Bright is the Director of Planning and Development and the responsible officer for this report. The report is titled Initiation of Scheme Amendment number 15 to Local Planning Scheme number 42, Lot 500 in brackets number 81 Ranford Road, Canning Vale, amending the reserve classification from public open space to environmental conservation. Any questions, councillors? The item appears on page 60 of tonight's agenda. Councillor Kunza.
Through you, Mayor Hall. Look, I just want to know if the city is still advocating for or lobbying for the Jandakot Eastern Link Road through any ministerial meetings, MP meetings, policy strategies or advocacy documents?
I haven't personally, since we last discussed this, CEO. Did you want to provide any commentary on that?
Only say no.
So there's no advocacy documents that has the Jandakot Eastern Link Road in that we're providing to people?
CEO?
No, councillors.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, councillors. We shall then move on to the next item, which is IE 002 of 24. The report title is Tender FM 035196 for Rostrata Family Centre and Prendwick Pavilion building upgrades. The officer's recommendation appears on page 93 of tonight's agenda. Any questions in relation to that tender? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just in respect to the scope of works, I note that it says the internal and external works, but I assume that that is specific to the building works. I was just wondering if there's any landscaping in the scope, because since we removed those two amazing trees because of the shot hole borer infestation, it is looking a little bit sparse and bare around the centre.
Director Bowe, and just on a broader level, are we looking at some sort of strategy in relation to the removal across the city for the shot hole borers? We're losing a few trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Deputy Mayor, no, is the short answer. The building scope, the subject of this report, doesn't include any detailed landscaping, but we're happy to take that and the recent removal of those trees under consideration. And I guess in answer to your question, Mr Mayor, we are working closely with the relevant authorities, keeping the relevant stakeholders informed, but there is very little that we can do as a local government organisation to stop the spread of the shot hole borer. But we can provide, I guess, a briefing paper on and outline some of the other cities' actions or courses of action that may be available to us.
Thank you. Sorry, my question wasn't entirely relevant, but I just thought I'd follow on. Thank you. Any further questions in relation to the tender specifically, councillors? Councillor Kunze, yes.
Just with paragraph 37 and the grant funding provided by the department, is the reason only 25% was provided instead of a third is because within the quantum of works there's stuff that's not eligible for funding?
Director Bowe. Sorry, Director McQuaid.
So I'll need to take that on notice and get back to you.
We'll take that on notice. Thank you, Councillor Kunze. Any further questions? No. Any further questions, councillors, on that item? Thank you. We'll distribute the answer for the to Councillor Kunze's question, and we move on to item IE 003 of 24, another tender. This one being FM 035.500 for Canning Vale Pavilion building upgrade. The officer's recommendation is on page 107 and is also on screen. Any questions in relation to that tender? Thank you. We shall then move on to CO 001 of 24. That's the draft reconciliation strategy for 2023. The officer's recommendation is on screen and also appears on page 117 of tonight's agenda. Any questions in relation to the draft reconciliation strategy? Councillor Bain, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to take this question on notice. Given the key focus area to celebrating culture and learning, how will Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture be incorporated into the design of the Kent Street Weir precinct? Thank you.
Thank you, Director McQuaid. Oh, Director Bowe. Thank you, Director Bowe.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Bain, a significant engagement exercise was undertaken by the project managers some time ago in preparation for the proposed introduction of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act changes. Some significant engagement with the traditional owners and a reference group in and around who have an interest in the Kent Street Weir precinct, and certainly a cultural management plan with input from that consultancy and engagement will impact and will flow through some of the designs, specifically of the playground and the playground elements and some of the other associated built structures around in that precinct.
Just further to that. Yes, CEO.
I was only going to add, Warren and his team, Director Bowe and his team are proposing to brief council on the design elements and the concept and progress of Kent Street Weir. That will certainly be in the next couple of months. So you'll be able to see those things or flow through the concept.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Hardeep Singh.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. What's the amount of proposed budget if this draft reconciliation plan is adopted in next week's council meeting?
Director
going
McQuaid.
Forward. Through you, sorry, I'm looking to the back of the room for confirmation, but I believe we have on the budget as part of our learning programs about $30,000 for delivery of across the board. So it is intended that that fund would obviously fund majority of the deliverables within the strategy, aside from any items that would obviously be forming part of a business case. But I think we've tried to retain the strategy to within what is deliverable within our budget and is fair and reasonable.
Thank you. Any further questions, Councillor Singh? No. Any further questions from the floor, councillors, on that item? Thank you. We shall then move on to the final item for the night, which is CO 002 of 24. The title of this final report being DLGSC CNLP 2024 to 25 grant applications, Ranford Oval sports lighting installation and Rossmoyne Bowling Club lighting upgrade. The officer's recommendation is on screen, also appears on page 123 of tonight's agenda. Any questions on that final item? Deputy Mayor, yes, go ahead.
Just confirming that this grant is one of those ones where we prioritise the project. So we are seeking funding in priority the Ranford Road, and then second priority is Rossmoyne Bowling Club. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Is
That's
there
a
any way
yes.
that we could, sorry, one more question. Is there any way that we could give some assurances that if the Rossmoyne Bottling Club is unsuccessful, that the next round we put that project as the first priority?
Is that the intention, Director?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The next round will be later this year, which will be for projects over 500,000. So we could certainly carry the Rossmoyne Bowling Club project through to February of next year in the priority, but we have also said if we don't get funding, we will consider it obviously as part of the budget process as well.
Thank you. Any further questions on that item? Thank you, councillors. Notices of motion for consideration at the next ordinary council meeting. There are none currently. Urgent business, there is none at item 9. Confidential matters at item 10, there are none. And closure at item 11, there being no further business. I thank you all for your attendance tonight. Thank you for the staff for making the time this evening, and also for those members of the public who have come along. I now declare the agenda briefing closed, the time being 6:25 p.m. Thank you, everyone.